Ohio Senator Rob Portman is a Republican on the Foreign Relations Committee. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar is the ranking Democrat on the Rules Committee. And I welcome both of you here to America's Newsroom and what has turned out to be a significant day of news. Good morning.
Good morning, Bill.
Joint Chiefs Chairman General Joe Dunford will brief all senators at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Senator Klobuchar, will you be there for that? And do you support the action the Commander-in-Chief has taken overnight?
Well, I most certainly will be there, and I think that hitting that base, which was the source of those chemical weapons, that atrocity directed at young children, it was an outrage. I think it was the right thing to do, but that being said, going forward, I believe we should have an authorization of military force if, in fact, there are going to be additional actions taken. And so I'm sure we're going to be discussing that today, but I believe it was the right thing to do.
It's described as a one-off. Do you think that's the case?
I don't know. That's why we're going to have the briefing today.
Senator Portman, will you be there? And do you, on record, support President Donald Trump's decision from overnight?
Bill, of course, I'll be there, and I think it's important that we hear from General Dunford, but also I think we need a strategy. I think this was an appropriate and measured response to an atrocity, particularly given the fact that Assad just so brazenly violated the 2013 agreement. It was just reached, in fact, a Russian-led agreement at the United Nations that said that they had to get rid of all of their chemical weapons. So I think this was an appropriate and measured response. But I think we need a strategy, and that's what I'm looking for, is a longer-term strategy for dealing with Syria and the region, to deal with the violence that's going on there, but also the refugee flows that have threatened not only our national security, but the national security of so many of our allies.
Yeah, these are big issues. Senator McCain described it as the hit on Gaddafi in 1986 on behalf of Ronald Reagan. You go in, you hit your targets, and then you pull back. Let's see if that is the case. The other big story happens in about 50 minutes, and that will be the vote on the confirmation of Judge Neil Gorsuch to the U.S. Supreme Court. To Senator Klobuchar, why is Neil Gorsuch so unacceptable to so many Democrats?
Well, I think part of this came out through the hearings, and you look at the recent analysis by the Washington Post, they actually found him to be more conservative than Justice Scalia in many of his opinions. So there was a difference of philosophy here. And I think what's very important is that we go forward, that we keep that 60-vote threshold for legislation so that we don't destroy the Senate. And what Senator Coons was talking about there was the use of the nuclear option and our concern of the impact that's going to have on the judiciary moving forward. In my state, I'm proud that we have Republican presidential appointed judges and Democrat appointed judges, all of whom have been professional and have a lot of good experience. We want to continue that moving forward and don't want to have this become partisan.
And you heard his hearings, 2 days worth, and you've met with him privately. Is he really that far out of the mainstream?
I felt that he was out of the mainstream, not really in how he interacted personally. I had a very good conversation with him. But when you really look at his record, things like throwing out the Chevron decision that Justice Scalia firmly embraced, used in 13,500 cases. I'm not going to relitigate the whole thing today, but there were some real concerns about his philosophy.
You're saying this wasn't pressure from the left, your constituents, a money-raising effort on behalf of liberals in other parts of the country? You're denying that?
No, I went into this with an open mind. Was I angry about what happened with Merrick Garland? Yes, I was. Would I have supported other nominees that I thought were more in the mainstream philosophically that the president might have nominated, but I wouldn't have chosen first? Yes, I would have. No, and so for me, this was really just about this nominee's views. And I think the reason that Senator Portman and I are here together today is to say that moving forward, we still think that there is ample opportunity for people to work together on legislation and other things that are very important to the country.
It appears 3 or 4 Democrats, Senator Portman, will vote for Neil Gorsuch at 11:30 Eastern time. But this whole nuclear option thing has literally been blown up in front of you. How does the Senate change after today?
Well, he'll win a bipartisan majority of the United States Senate today, and he'll take his seat on the Supreme Court. And as you know, Bill, I think this guy's incredibly well qualified. And to the point that he's not mainstream, Amy and I agree on a lot, but we disagree on this. I mean, 97% of his cases were unanimous as part of a 3-judge panel, almost always involving, by the way, judges that were appointed by Democrats and Republicans alike. He was in the majority 98% of his time. Only one of his decisions ever even went to the Supreme Court to be challenged, and that one was affirmed. In other words, they said he was right. So I think he's, incredibly bright and qualified and experienced, and he's the right kind of person to have on the court. So
we expect that vote in 50 minutes. Third topic, to both of you. You are pushing President Trump to put pressure on the Chinese president to stop synthetic opioids from coming into the U.S. and to crack down as they are made in China. Senator Portman, what can President Trump do on this? An issue that he campaigned against, frankly, in places like New Hampshire and in Ohio.
No, look, it's outrageous and totally unacceptable that you have these poisons being produced in China, in laboratories. That's where most of it comes from, according to law enforcement, then sent by the U.S. mail system into our communities. And this poison is affecting all of our communities now. In Ohio, unfortunately, we're at the tip of the spear here. We're probably the #1 state in the country, but every state's being affected. And Amy Klobuchar and I have worked on these anti-drug issues together for years. And we have new legislation that's called the STOP Act that says simply, let's require the post office to have the kind of information that the other private carriers have so that law enforcement can find these packages and keep this poison out of our communities. And of course, the president should raise this with President Xi, because China has the opportunity to shut down these labs and to make illegal these chemicals that go into making fentanyl. This is this new synthetic heroin bill that's just devastating
our communities. It's so elusive, too. You change one molecule and you got to track it down yet again. Senator Klobuchar, just quickly on this. Are we making progress, or is this still the scourge that's been described for the past several years?
Senator Portman and I and 2 others led the bill last year on opioids, and so we're starting now to have a national blueprint for the country to really take this on. In Minnesota, we've lost everyone from Prince, the superstar, to teenagers in rural areas, and it is a scourge, especially in the heartland of America and rural parts of our state. And so what we would like to focus on is, one, prescription drug monitoring, so people can't doctor shop and just keep getting drugs to feed their addiction, and then getting these illegal drugs off of our shores. And that's what the bill is about, that we've worked on together.
I wish you the very best on that effort. And thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Bill.
Amy Klobuchar, Rob Portman, Democratic and Republican senators together on that issue, at least. Thanks.